Oh, isn't
Mara
this
was
lovely? A bit
72
worn, but the
years old.
clasp is unique.
She lived
Find anything
alone
good
in
here?
a small blue
Possibly. I'm
house
just
at the
looking
edge of the
inside.
town.
Nice patina
Her
on
house
that
had a little
brass.
garden in front and a small wooden fence that was painted white but chipped in many places. Each morning, Mara woke up early. She liked to sit by the window with a cup of warm tea and watch the sun rise. She fed the birds that came to her garden and watered the plants that grew in small clay pots. Life was quiet, simple, and slow, and she liked it that way. Though her days were calm, Mara liked to have small adventures. She often walked around the town, visiting small shops or watching people pass by. Sometimes she would go to the library and read old books about places she had never visited. Today, she had decided to do something different. She wanted to go to a garage sale she had heard about from a neighbor. The thought of finding something old and unique made her heart feel light. The sun was bright and warm as Mara walked slowly down the street. She carried a small purse and wore her favorite hat, a soft beige one with a ribbon. As she approached the house where the garage sale was taking place, she saw tables set up outside, covered with clothes, books, dishes, toys, and trinkets. Many people were moving quickly from table to table, searching for items they wanted. Some carried bags, and some whispered to friends about the things they had already seen. Mara walked slowly. She liked to touch the items gently, as if she could feel their stories through her fingers. Her eyes caught a table near the door of the gray house. On it lay an old brown bag. It was not large, and the leather was worn and cracked. Its strap was thin and had small marks where it had been held many times. The bag looked simple, ordinary even, but somehow it stood out to Mara. She reached for it and picked it up. It felt light in her hands. Mara turned it over and over, examining the small scratches and stains. She imagined the bag had been everywhere. Perhaps it had traveled across the country, or even farther. She could almost see the stories hidden inside it, waiting to be discovered. The man running the garage sale noticed Mara holding the bag. He was young and busy helping other buyers. He glanced at the bag and said, "That old thing? You can have it for $2. Mara smiled. She didn't know why, but she felt the bag was meant for her. She reached into her purse and handed the man $2. She thanked him and carefully held the bag as she walked home. The bag swung gently against her side with each step. Mara felt a quiet excitement inside her. At her kitchen table, Mara set the bag down. The kitchen smelled faintly of baked bread and fresh flowers from the window. She ran her fingers along the surface of the bag again. The leather was soft and smooth in some areas, rough in others. Small marks told of time and use. She wondered about the person who had owned it before her. Who were they? Where had they gone? What had they carried in this bag? Mara took a deep breath and slowly opened the bag. Inside, she found a small cloth pouch tied with a thin string. It was neat and careful, like someone had wanted to keep it safe. Her hands trembled slightly as she untied it. Inside the pouch were 3 items. The first was a folded letter. The paper was yellowed with age, soft and fragile. The second item was a tiny metal key. It was old and worn, but still solid. The third item was a black and white photograph. Mara picked up the photograph. It showed a young woman standing beside a train. The woman smiled, holding the same brown bag Mara now had in her hands. Her eyes were bright, full of hope, as if she were ready to start a journey. Mara stared at the photo for a long time. She felt a strange connection to this unknown woman. Then Mara unfolded the letter. The handwriting was neat and careful, the ink slightly faded. She read the first line and felt her heart beat faster. To whoever finds this bag. If you are reading this, then my journey did not end as planned. Mara's eyes widened. She read the letter slowly, savoring each word. The handwriting was beautiful and elegant, and each sentence seemed to carry a piece of the writer's heart. The letter spoke of dreams, travels, and small adventures that had been interrupted. It spoke of hopes, secrets, and memories that the writer had wanted to preserve. Mara felt her curiosity grow. She could imagine the young woman in the photograph, packing this very bag for her travels. Perhaps she had carried her clothes, her letters, small treasures she found on the way. Mara wondered where she had gone and what had stopped her journey. She held the tiny key next. It was small enough to fit in her palm, cold and smooth. What did it open? A small box. A drawer? A secret door. Mara's mind filled with questions. She imagined hidden places, mysterious rooms, or even old trunks filled with stories waiting to be told. Outside her window, the birds chirped as if they were cheering Mara on. The sunlight moved across her kitchen floor, highlighting the small bag and its treasures. Mara felt a spark inside her chest. She had expected a quiet day, but now her day had become something entirely different. Something exciting and mysterious. Mara's imagination grew wilder. She pictured herself following the woman in the photograph, discovering the places she had visited, finding the objects she had left behind. The bag was more than just leather and thread. It was a key to a story that had waited years to be discovered. She placed the bag gently back on the table and looked around her kitchen. Everything seemed ordinary, but Mara felt a change inside herself. The air felt charged with possibilities. The small bag had brought life into her quiet morning, and Mara knew she could not leave it alone. She decided she would investigate the bag's history. She would find out who had owned it, where it had traveled, and what secrets it held. The letter, the key, and the photograph were just the beginning. Mara smiled to herself. For the first time in a long time, she felt the thrill of adventure. Mara stood up, holding the small brown bag close to her chest. The garden outside her window glowed in the morning sun, and the birds continued to sing. She knew her quiet days were changing. The bag had chosen her, and Mara was ready to uncover its story, step by step. Her heart was full of curiosity and wonder. She felt alive in a way she had not felt for years. The old brown bag was no longer just an object. It was a promise of discovery, mystery, and excitement. Mara had no idea what awaited her, but she was ready to find out. And so, with a soft smile and a bright heart, Mara prepared to begin a journey she had never imagined, all starting with a small brown bag she had found at a simple garage sale. Mara could not stop thinking about the small brown bag. She carried it carefully to her living room and placed it on the old wooden coffee table. The sunlight from the window fell on it, making the worn leather shine softly. She touched the bag gently, as if it were a fragile treasure. Her mind raced with questions. Who had owned it before? Where had it traveled? What had happened to the young woman in the photograph? Mara decided to start with the letter. She unfolded it once more and read it slowly, savoring every word. The handwriting was beautiful, but the words carried sadness and hope at the same time. The letter spoke about a journey the woman had wanted to take, a journey that she had never finished. It mentioned towns she had visited, people she had met, and dreams she had chased. Mara felt a strange connection. The woman in the letter and the photograph seemed almost like someone she had known long ago. Mara studied the tiny key again. She wondered what it could unlock. Her house had many old drawers and boxes, but she had never seen one that would fit such a small key. Maybe it belonged to the woman's home. Maybe it was meant to open a secret box. Mara smiled, imagining treasures hidden inside a small chest. Her curiosity grew stronger. After a moment, she decided she could not wait. She needed to do something. She put on her shoes and her coat, even though it was warm, and walked to the town's small library. The library was quiet and calm, with the smell of old books filling the air. Mara liked it there. She liked the way books could tell stories of the past, just like the small brown bag in her hands. She went straight to the reference section, looking for old newspapers and town records. The librarian, a kind man named Henry, noticed her carrying the bag. "Good morning, Mara. What brings you here today?" he asked. Mara smiled. "I found something," she said, showing him the photograph and the letter. "I think it belonged to someone from this town. I want to know who she was." Henry looked at the photo carefully. "This is very old," he said. "The train in the background stopped running many years ago. This photograph could be from 50 or 60 years ago. I can help you look through old records, if you like. Mara felt a spark of excitement. She had imagined this moment, but now it was real. She and Henry spent hours looking at old newspapers, birth records, and town registries. Mara showed him the photograph again, pointing out small details, the woman's coat, her shoes, and the brown bag itself. Finally, Henry found a clue. Here, he said, pointing at an old newspaper clipping. The article was about a young woman named Lila Morgan. She had been planning to travel across the country by train. She had left town suddenly, and no one knew exactly why. People said she wanted to find a new life, but the details were unclear. This was 50 years ago. Mara's heart raced. Could this be the same woman? She showed Henry the photograph. This might be her, she said softly. Henry nodded. You might be right, he said. The bag could have been hers. Maybe she kept it with her, on her journey. Mara thanked Henry and carefully put the photograph and letter back in the small cloth pouch. She held the tiny key tightly. She wanted to find out more about Lila Morgan. She wanted to know where she had gone and what had happened to her. That afternoon, Mara returned home and placed the bag on the table. She felt as if the bag was alive, holding stories that were waiting to be told. She sat down and thought. What if she could follow Lila's journey? What if the bag had traveled far and seen many things? Mara's imagination ran wild. She pictured Lila sitting on a train, looking out of the window at passing towns, carrying the same brown bag. She pictured small towns, forests, rivers, and mountains. Mara wanted to see those places too, even if only through the story Lila had left behind. Mara decided to take the next step. She wanted to explore the town first, looking for anyone who might remember Lila Morgan. She walked slowly through the streets, carrying the small brown bag. Some of the older people she met remembered Lila, but only vaguely. They spoke of a kind young woman, full of dreams, who had left town suddenly. No one knew why. Mara listened carefully, storing every memory and every story. She felt closer to Lila with each step. One afternoon, while walking near the old train station, Mara found something interesting. A small, hidden bench near the tracks had a tiny metal box attached under it. She could not help but notice the lock. Her heart skipped a beat. Could the tiny key she had fit this lock? She knelt down carefully and tried it. The key fit perfectly. With a gentle turn, the lock opened. Inside the box was a small notebook. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellowed. Mara carefully opened it. Inside were notes, sketches, and small lists of towns and train stations. Some pages had small drawings of flowers, trees, and animals. Others had short stories and letters written to people Mara did not know. Mara could feel Lila's spirit in the notebook. Each page carried her hopes, her dreams, and her adventures. Mara realized that this small brown bag and its contents were more than just objects. They were a bridge to the past, a connection between two lives, separated by time but brought together by chance. Days passed, and Mara visited the old train station every morning. She read through the notebook carefully, making notes and trying to follow Lila's journey. She learned about towns she had never visited, small cafes, libraries, and parks. Mara felt as if she was traveling with Lila. Each page brought excitement, curiosity, and a sense of adventure she had not felt in years. Mara even started to write her own notes in a small journal. She wrote about her days, the people she met, and her discoveries. She realized that Lila's story had inspired her. The small brown bag had changed her quiet life into one full of curiosity and exploration. One morning, Mara received a letter in the mail. It was from a woman named Clara, who claimed to be a distant relative of Lila Morgan. Clara had heard about the small brown bag and the notebook. She wanted to meet Mara to share family stories and learn more about Lila. Mara felt a warm joy. She had not expected this. Lila's journey was not only hers to discover, it connected her to other people who remembered and loved Lila. That evening, Mara sat by her window, holding the brown bag. She thought about all the towns, all the people, and all the stories she had discovered so far. She smiled, feeling grateful for the chance to uncover a story that had waited for so many years. She knew that this was only the beginning. There were more stories hidden in the bag, more adventures waiting to be discovered. Mara felt alive, filled with excitement and hope. The small brown bag had brought mystery, connection, and inspiration into her life. Mara realized that even in quiet towns and quiet days, adventure could be found if one was willing to look closely. She looked at the photograph of Lila Morgan again, and felt a deep respect for the woman who had carried this bag so long ago. Mara knew that Lila's story would continue to live through her, through every note, every discovery, and every moment she spent exploring the past. That night, Mara placed the bag carefully beside her bed. She felt comforted by it, as if Lila herself were watching over her. The notebook, the photograph, and the tiny key rested inside, waiting for the next discovery. Mara closed her eyes and dreamed of trains, towns, and small adventures, ready to continue the journey tomorrow. The next morning, Mara woke up early as usual, feeling a quiet excitement in her heart. The small brown bag sat on her table, almost glowing in the soft morning light. She poured herself a cup of tea and carried the bag with her to the kitchen table. Today, she decided, she would follow the clues in the notebook more carefully. Each page was full of notes, sketches, and small letters that Lila Morgan had left behind. Mara could feel Lila's presence through the pages. She opened the notebook to a page that had a list of towns and dates written neatly in the corner. It seemed like a map of Lila's journey. Mara traced her finger over the names: Willow Creek, Pine Hill, Lakeview, and Maplewood. Some of the names sounded familiar, others she had never heard of. She realized that if she could visit these places, even if only briefly, she might understand more about Lila's journey. Mara felt a spark of courage. She had lived in the same town for many years, but she had never traveled much. She had always been content with quiet days and small routines. But now, with the small brown bag and the notebook, she felt a new kind of energy. She wanted to follow the story. She wanted to know why Lila had left so suddenly, and what adventures had shaped her life. Before she left the house, Mara carefully placed the photograph back in the pouch. The photo reminded her of Lila's determination and hope. She tucked the tiny key in her coat pocket, wondering what it might unlock next. She carried the bag on her arm, feeling its weight as both ordinary and magical at the same time. Her first stop was Willow Creek, a town not far from hers. Mara drove slowly along the winding road, looking at the trees and the fields on either side. The morning sun shone brightly, and birds flew across the sky. Mara felt a thrill as if she were stepping into Lila's footsteps. Willow Creek was small and quiet. The streets were lined with old brick buildings and wooden benches. Mara stopped at the town library first. She met an elderly librarian named Mrs. Thompson, who remembered stories from many years ago. Mara showed her the photograph and the notebook. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened with recognition. "I remember Lila Morgan," she said. "She visited our town long ago. She stayed with her cousin for a few weeks and spent a lot of time writing and drawing. She was very curious and full of life. I believe she wanted to see the world, but something made her leave suddenly. No one really knew why." Mara listened carefully. She asked about small details: where Lila had stayed, what places she had visited, and whether she had left anything behind. Mrs. Thompson smiled softly. "She loved the old train station," she said. "She used to sit there for hours, sketching the trains and the people who passed through. I think she kept a notebook just like the one you have." Mara thanked Mrs. Thompson and walked to the old train station. The building was quiet and empty now, but she could imagine Lila sitting on one of the benches, her brown bag at her side, watching trains arrive and depart. Mara sat on a bench and opened the notebook again. She traced the sketches with her fingers, seeing trees, houses, and rivers that Lila had drawn. Mara felt a strong connection to the woman she had never met. As she walked along the platform, Mara noticed a small wooden box hidden under the bench. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be another secret from Lila? She lifted the box carefully. It was locked, but she remembered the tiny key in her pocket. She took it out and tried it. The key fit perfectly. Inside the box were letters tied with a ribbon. Mara carefully untied them and began to read. The letters were addressed to friends and family Lila had left behind. They spoke of hope, excitement, and the desire to see new places. One letter mentioned a town called Lakeview, which Mara recognized from the notebook. It seemed that Lila had left a trail, leaving little clues for anyone who wanted to follow her journey. Mara smiled. She felt like a detective, uncovering secrets that had been hidden for decades. She carefully put the letters back in the box and the box under the bench, just as she had found it. She did not take anything with her except the notebook and the brown bag. She wanted to honor Lila's memory. After spending the morning in Willow Creek, Mara decided to visit the next town on the list, Pine Hill. She drove slowly, enjoying the scenery. The road wound through hills and forests, and Mara felt a sense of adventure she had never known. She imagined Lila traveling this same route many years ago, carrying her brown bag, full of hope and curiosity. Pine Hill was a quiet town with small houses and friendly people. Mara stopped at a local cafe for a short break. She noticed an elderly man reading the newspaper in the corner. Something about him seemed familiar. Mara approached him and showed him the photograph. He looked closely and then smiled. "Lila Morgan," he said softly. "I remember her. She stayed in our town for a short time. She helped at the small market and would often sit by the lake in the evening, sketching and writing. She was a bright young woman, full of ideas. I never understood why she left so suddenly." Mara asked questions about the places Lila had visited, the people she had met, and anything she might have left behind. The man shared stories of the lake, the small forest nearby, and a tiny cabin where Lila had spent a few nights. Mara felt more and more connected to Lila with each story. After Pine Hill, Mara drove to Lakeview. She could feel the energy of Lila's journey in her own heart. Each town revealed a new part of the woman's life. Each person she met shared memories, small details, and stories that brought Lila to life in Mara's imagination. By the end of the day, Mara returned home tired but happy. She placed the brown bag on her table and opened the notebook. She wrote down notes from her visits: the streets, the benches, the lakes, and the forests. She traced the route Lila had taken, connecting the towns with lines and circles. She could see the path clearly now, like a map of adventure waiting to be followed. Mara realized something important. Lila's journey was not only about travel. It was about curiosity, courage, and the desire to explore life fully. Mara had never traveled far in her life, but through this journey, she felt like she had. She had followed Lila's footsteps, uncovered hidden secrets, and connected with people who remembered her. That night, Mara sat by her window with the small brown bag beside her. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had discovered the first part of Lila's story, and she knew there was more to uncover. The letters, the notebook, and the tiny key were not just objects. They were guides, leading her toward mysteries, adventures, and connections that had been waiting for years. Mara closed her eyes and imagined Lila standing at the train station, smiling, ready to continue her journey. Mara felt as if Lila's spirit was beside her, guiding her, encouraging her to keep exploring. She promised herself that she would continue following the trail, no matter where it led. The small brown bag had become more than an object. It was a symbol of adventure, curiosity, and the magic of discovering stories that were hidden in the past. Mara knew that each day would bring new surprises, new secrets, and new connections. She felt alive in a way she had never felt before. Mara carefully placed the notebook inside the brown bag and hung it on a hook by the door. She looked at the photograph of Lila Morgan one last time that night, smiling softly. Tomorrow, she would continue the journey, visiting Maplewood and other towns that Lila had written about. Mara felt ready for whatever mysteries awaited her. She knew that with each step, she was not only uncovering Lila's story but also creating her own story, filled with curiosity, courage, and the quiet excitement of adventure. The next morning, Mara woke up feeling a mixture of excitement and curiosity. The small brown bag sat on her table, as if it were waiting for her. She poured herself a cup of warm tea and carried the bag to the kitchen table. Today, she decided, she would focus on Maplewood, the next town in Lila's journey. The notebook had many notes about this place, and Mara felt that it might hold important clues. She studied the pages carefully. Lila had written about a small library in Maplewood, a quiet lake, and a house near the edge of town. Mara felt her heart race. Perhaps this was where Lila had stopped for a long time, or maybe something important had happened there. Mara packed the notebook carefully into the bag, placed the tiny key in her coat pocket, and set off. The drive to Maplewood was longer than the other towns. The road twisted through hills and forests, and Mara enjoyed the view. The sun shone brightly, making the green fields and trees glow. Mara imagined Lila traveling this same road many years ago. She pictured her carrying the small brown bag, full of hope, curiosity, and dreams of adventure. When Mara arrived in Maplewood, she noticed that it was slightly larger than the previous towns. The streets were lined with old buildings, small shops, and houses with gardens. The town had a quiet charm, and Mara felt a strange sense of anticipation. She decided to start with the library, just as Lila had written in the notebook. The Maplewood Library was an old brick building with tall windows and wooden doors. Mara walked inside and was greeted by a kind librarian named Mrs. Carter. Mara showed her the photograph and the notebook. Mrs. Carter adjusted her glasses and studied them carefully. "I remember Lila Morgan," Mrs. Carter said softly. "She visited here many years ago. She was interested in history and old letters. She came to this library often to read and write. I remember her asking about small towns, old houses, and local families. She was very curious and polite, always smiling." Mara felt a thrill of excitement. "Do you know if she left anything behind?" she asked carefully. Mrs. Carter nodded. "Yes, she did. She borrowed some books, and some letters were left here. I have kept them in the archives. If you like, you can see them." Mara followed Mrs. Carter to a small room in the back of the library. Inside were old letters, books, and a few small boxes. Mrs. Carter opened one of the boxes and revealed a collection of letters tied with ribbons. Mara's hands trembled slightly as she took one of the letters and carefully untied the ribbon. The letter was addressed to a friend of Lila's. It spoke about the small lake near Maplewood, a quiet place where Lila liked to sit and write. The letter mentioned a small house by the edge of the lake. Lila had described it as peaceful and full of light. She had written that she wanted to visit it every day while she stayed in Maplewood. Mara felt her curiosity grow. She wanted to see the house by the lake. She thanked Mrs. Carter and set off. The directions in the notebook were clear. The lake was just outside the town, surrounded by trees and small hills. Mara walked along the path that Lila had described, carrying the small brown bag carefully in her hands. When Mara reached the lake, she was amazed. The water was calm and clear, reflecting the blue sky and the trees that surrounded it. A gentle breeze moved across the surface, and birds flew overhead. Mara could imagine Lila sitting on the grassy shore, writing in her notebook, watching the sunlight dance on the water. Mara walked along the edge of the lake, looking for the house mentioned in the letters. Soon, she saw it. It was small, made of wood, with a slanted roof and a garden full of flowers. The house looked quiet and welcoming. Mara felt a strange connection to it, as if the house had been waiting for her. She approached the front door carefully. The house seemed empty, but Mara noticed a small box placed on the porch. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be another clue from Lila? She opened the box and found a small journal. The cover was worn, and the pages were filled with neat handwriting. Mara carefully opened it. Inside, she found notes, sketches, and letters written by Lila. Some pages described her daily life in Maplewood, the people she met, and the places she visited. Others were reflections, thoughts about life, and dreams for the future. Mara felt as if she could hear Lila's voice through the pages. One entry caught Mara's attention. It spoke about a hidden drawer in the small house. Lila had written that she kept something important there, a secret she had wanted to protect. Mara's heart raced. She looked around the house carefully, searching for any sign of the drawer. In the corner of the living room, she noticed a small wooden cabinet. It had a tiny keyhole, almost hidden. Mara took the tiny metal key from her pocket and tried it. The key fit perfectly. With a gentle turn, the drawer opened. Inside the drawer were small items carefully wrapped in cloth. Mara unwrapped them slowly. She found a delicate necklace, a small locket, and a folded piece of paper. The necklace was simple but beautiful, made of tiny beads that shimmered in the sunlight. The locket was old and had a tiny picture inside. Mara opened the folded paper and read it carefully. The note was written by Lila. It spoke about her dreams, her fears, and the people she loved. She had written that she wanted someone to find these items one day, someone who could understand her journey and carry her story forward. Mara felt a deep sense of connection. Lila had left these treasures for her, or for someone like her, who would value them and continue the journey. Mara carefully placed the items back in the drawer. She knew they were precious, and she wanted to honor Lila's wishes. She felt a strong sense of responsibility. The small brown bag, the notebook, the letters, and now these treasures had become a bridge between the past and the present. Mara realized that she was part of Lila's story now. She spent the rest of the day walking around Maplewood, visiting the places mentioned in the journal and the notebook. She sat by the lake, watched the birds, and imagined Lila writing at the same spot. She visited the small shops and spoke to the people who remembered Lila. Each story, each memory, brought the past to life. By evening, Mara returned home, tired but happy. She placed the small brown bag on the table and opened the notebook. She wrote down notes from her visit, sketches of the lake and the house, and memories shared by the people she had met. She felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that she was uncovering the story step by step. That night, Mara sat by her window, holding the small brown bag. She thought about Lila Morgan, the young woman who had traveled with hope, curiosity, and courage. Mara felt inspired. She knew that there were more secrets to uncover, more adventures waiting. The journey was far from over. Mara placed the notebook and the bag carefully on the table. She looked at the photograph of Lila Morgan, smiling softly. Tomorrow, she would continue following the journey, uncovering more of Lila's life and the mysteries she had left behind. Mara felt alive, filled with curiosity, courage, and the quiet joy of discovery. The small brown bag had become more than an object. It was a symbol of connection, adventure, and the magic of stories waiting to be found. Mara knew that with each step, she was uncovering not just Lila's story, but a part of her own story as well. The next morning, Mara woke up early, her heart full of excitement. The small brown bag lay on her table, holding the notebook, letters, and treasures she had found so far. Today, she decided, she would uncover the final part of Lila Morgan's journey. There was a feeling in Mara's chest that something important awaited her, something that would explain the story completely. She carefully packed the notebook into the bag, along with the tiny key. The photograph of Lila Morgan rested in her coat pocket, close to her heart. Mara felt as if she were carrying a piece of history, a connection to a life full of courage, dreams, and adventure. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and smiled. Today would be another step closer to understanding the young woman who had left so many clues behind. Her first stop was a small town called Fernwood. According to the notebook, it was the last place Lila had written about in detail. The road to Fernwood was narrow and winding, with trees on both sides forming a natural tunnel. Mara drove slowly, enjoying the sunlight filtering through the leaves. She imagined Lila traveling this same road, carrying her brown bag, full of hope and curiosity. When she arrived, Fernwood seemed quieter than Maplewood, almost as if it were holding its breath. The streets were lined with old stone buildings, and the air smelled faintly of flowers and fresh earth. Mara decided to start at the small inn mentioned in Lila's notebook. She walked up to the door and knocked gently. A kind woman named Mrs. Foster answered. Mara showed her the photograph and explained the journey she was following. Mrs. Foster's eyes widened in recognition. "I remember Lila Morgan," she said. "She stayed here many years ago. She was polite, curious, and always eager to explore. She spoke about visiting the nearby forest and a small hidden garden. She said she wanted to leave a part of her story behind for someone who might understand it. Mara felt a thrill. "Do you know where that garden is?" she asked. Mrs. Foster nodded. "Yes, it is just behind the inn. There is a small path through the trees. Not many people know about it now. Lila said it was her secret place to think and write." Mara thanked Mrs. Foster and followed the path behind the inn. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves. The path led to a small clearing with flowers growing along the edges. At the center, she saw a stone bench and a tiny wooden box partially hidden under a bush. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be the final clue? She knelt carefully and opened the box. Inside were several items wrapped in soft cloth. Mara unwrapped them slowly. She found a delicate bracelet, a small diary, and a folded letter. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the letter. The letter was written by Lila herself. It spoke about her dreams, her fears, and her reasons for leaving her hometown. She had written that she wanted to explore the world, to see new places, and to live life fully. She mentioned that she had carried the small brown bag with her everywhere. The bag held her treasures, her memories, and her hopes. Lila explained in the letter that she had stopped in Fernwood to rest, and she had left some items behind for someone who might find them one day. She wanted the finder to know that life was full of opportunities, that it was never too late to follow one's dreams, and that small things could carry great meaning. Mara felt tears in her eyes. She realized that Lila's story was not just about traveling, it was about courage, hope, and the beauty of life itself. Mara understood that the small brown bag had carried not only Lila's belongings but also her spirit, her dreams, and her message. She opened the small diary and read the entries. Lila had written about simple joys, walking in the forest, watching the sunrise, talking to strangers, and discovering small wonders in every town. Mara felt inspired. She realized that life could be an adventure at any age, and that even quiet days could hold meaning if one looked carefully. Mara decided to sit on the stone bench and spend some time thinking. She held the small brown bag close to her and imagined Lila sitting beside her, smiling. The forest felt alive, as if it were celebrating the connection between the past and the present. Mara felt a deep peace. After a while, she walked back to the path and returned to Fernwood Town. She stopped at the small cafe and spoke to people who remembered Lila. They shared stories of her kindness, her curiosity, and her gentle spirit. Mara realized that Lila's life, though filled with mystery, had touched many people in small but meaningful ways. As the sun began to set, Mara decided to return home. She carried the small brown bag carefully, feeling the weight of the journey she had completed. Each town, each letter, each item had brought her closer to understanding Lila Morgan. Mara felt grateful for the chance to uncover the story and for the courage it had given her. When she arrived home, she placed the bag on the table and opened the notebook. She wrote down everything she had discovered in Fernwood, the hidden garden, the stone bench, the letters, and the diary. She wanted to preserve the story carefully, just as Lila had wanted someone to do. Mara looked at the photograph of Lila Morgan. She smiled softly, feeling a connection that crossed time. Lila's journey had inspired her, reminded her that life was full of possibilities, and taught her that curiosity and courage could lead to discovery. That evening, Mara sat by her window with the small brown bag beside her. She thought about her own life, the quiet days she had lived, and the adventures she had experienced while following Lila's journey. She realized that the story of the small brown bag had changed her life. It had shown her that every person's life, no matter how ordinary it seemed, could hold extraordinary meaning. Mara carefully placed the diary, letters, and notebook back into the bag. She hung it on a hook by the door, feeling a sense of completion and fulfillment. The small brown bag had traveled far, carried memories, and held stories waiting to be discovered. Now it had found its final home with Mara, who would treasure it always. She looked out the window at the night sky, stars twinkling softly above. Mara felt a gentle joy in her heart. Lila Morgan's journey had ended, but the lessons and inspiration lived on. Mara knew that she, too, could embrace life with curiosity and courage, seeking small adventures every day, carrying hope and kindness wherever she went. The small brown bag had brought mystery, discovery, and connection into her quiet life. Mara realized that stories were not just about the past. They were about the present, the choices we make, and the lives we touch. She smiled softly, knowing that she had been part of something magical, something that would continue to inspire her and perhaps others, long after the journey had begun. Mara closed her eyes, holding the small brown bag close. She felt calm, happy, and ready for whatever the future might bring. The journey of the brown bag had come to an end, but Mara's own journey, inspired by curiosity, courage, and the beauty of discovery, was only beginning.